There's been criticism of the company OceanGate, who offered these trips, questions about their safety record, as we heard this week from a millionaire who was due to go on the craft but pulled out because of concerns about safety. There's been criticism of one of the men who lost their lives, the billionaire Hamish Harding, criticism actually really of him for just being a billionaire. Criticism from the director too of the 1997 film Titanic, James Cameron, who describes his view of the safety of that craft, as well as the way in which the news about it came out. You'll hear from him in just a moment. And some really gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, and I actually find enraging testimony from the family of Shahzad Dawood and his son Sulman, both of whom died on the Titan. Sulman's aunt, Asma Dawood, spoke to NBC and said that her nephew had informed relatives in the run-up to the trip that he was, I'm quoting here, terrified and wasn't very up for it, suggesting that the young man eventually joined with his dad and the rest of the crew to please him because it was Father's Day. Take a listen.
Well, he was actually, that's the thing about Suleiman. He had a sense about things, and he had a sense that this was not okay, and he was not very comfortable about doing it. He was very, very not into doing it, but it was a Father's Day thing. It was a bonding experience. And, he wanted the adventure of a lifetime, just like his father did, because his father wanted it. And that was Sulti all the way. He would do anything for anyone. The thought of a 19-year-old trapped on that was just next level, because the other crew members were older. They were there of their own interest. They were there for their own reasons. But Suleiman was just there for a Father's Day bonding experience. And to be honest, as terrible as this sounds, at least knowing that they wouldn't have had time to know. They would have just been sat there enjoying themselves, and then suddenly, boom, and it was over. To know that my Sulti didn't feel a moment's pain, that his brain didn't even realize, that's relief.
It makes my blood run cold, that. That's Asma Dawood, who is Sulaiman Dawood's aunt. Because, of course, the loss of life is absolutely terrible and awful for all of the families. But the idea that this young man, who had his whole life ahead of him, was not really fully set on whether this was a good idea, wasn't particularly up for it, and just wanted to please his dad for Father's Day, honestly, it makes me want to scream. And I think you know what I want to say. I think you want to say it as well. I know you're thinking it. I'm tearing my hair out listening to that description, but I'm also incredibly aware that the thing I want to say, I probably wouldn't say to the family if they were sitting in the studio now, because they're in enough pain and don't need any more. James Cameron directed the film Titanic. He's been down to view the wreck quite a few times and has his own criticism of OceanGate.
OceanGate shouldn't have been doing what it was doing. I think that's pretty clear. I wish I had been more vocal about that, but I think I was unaware that they weren't certified. Because I wasn't really studying it. I wasn't really interested. Stockton Rush asked me if I wanted to go out there and dive this season. I wasn't interested. There was a lot of concern about this outfit and this sub. A lot of concern, even to the extent that I wasn't involved in it because I was making Avatar 2 at the time, but a lot of them got together and wrote a letter to OceanGate and said, you have to certify. You cannot take people down. It's irresponsible, and it could lead to catastrophe. Monday morning, when I first found out about the incident, got on a whole bunch of calls and emails. It's a small community. Within an hour and a half, I had the following information. They were on descent. They were at 3,500 feet. They lost comms and tracking, the last one being the critical one, because the transponder that's used to track a sub during descent and on the bottom is a fully autonomous system. It's in its own pressure housing, and it has its own battery power. So for them to lose comms and tracking at the same time, sub was gone. There was no question in my mind. For days, I tried to run other scenarios that could account for it. I could come up with nothing. Um, so the next thing I did was contacted a few more people and managed to track down. There are acoustic networks around. Some are research, some are intelligence. We got confirmation within an hour that there had been a loud bang at the same time that that comms were lost. A loud bang on the hydrophones, loss of transducer or transponder, loss of comms. I knew what happened. Sub imploded. I sent emails to everybody I know. I said, we've lost some friends. The sub has imploded. It's on the bottom in pieces right now. I sent that out Monday morning. I never believed in that technology of wound carbon fiber, wound filament, cylindrical hull. I thought it was a horrible idea. I wish I'd spoken up, but I assumed somebody was smarter than me, because I'd never experimented with that technology, but it just sounded bad. Now there's one wreck lying next to the other wreck for the same damn reason.
James Cameron, the director of the film Titanic, saying not only about the criticism he had and the worries he had about the safety of that craft, but also, I think this is interesting, is going to be worthy of some further exploration, the timeline of all of this, suggesting that there was confirmation on Monday morning of a loud bang, indicating to him at least that the craft had imploded. And yet that wasn't confirmed until yesterday. And of course, there were details released by the US Coast Guard of some regular banging. And what about this? This is from one of the families of those who died in the Titanic disaster. They are pretty furious about the whole notion of what I read is called dark tourism, the idea of visiting places where some of the darkest events of human history have unfolded, which I guess, the first one that springs to mind obviously is Auschwitz, but I don't know, Chernobyl perhaps, Hiroshima, those kind of places. John Locasio, whose uncles Alberto and Sebastiano died on the Titanic, had this to say.
I could compare it to looking inside a grave. I mean, people died there tragically, very tragically. Why make it a place for people to go see? Why do you have to do that? Let the people rest. Their bodies are there, or what's left of them. The ship is there, or what's left of it. And it's just a peaceful sight there right now, or as peaceful as can be.
I wonder what you make of that criticism. Leave the place alone. It's a graveyard. It's meant to be a place of peace for people who lost their lives in a horrible accident. Why are people being ghoulish and wanting to go down there and have a look? Is that fair criticism? 0345 6060 973. Here's Kieran. Tom, what is the difference between respectfully visiting a concentration camp like Auschwitz and respectfully visiting the wreckage of the Titanic? Both of these were awful, terrible disasters for different reasons. I don't think that the family of those who died 3 or 4 generations away from people who died in the Titanic should be criticising people as long as they do it in a respectful way. I just think there is a difference. There is a difference between Auschwitz and the Titanic. Auschwitz is a reminder of the real existence of pure human evil and what effects that pure human evil had, and a reminder to be watchful about it again in the future, whereas the Titanic was an accident, a tragic accident, but an accident nonetheless. 0345 6060 973. Phil's in Penrith. Phil.
How are you doing, Tom?
I'm well, sir. What do you make of that criticism?
I think it's absolutely right. I think it's ghoulish. They're going to have a look at where all those people died, just for the sake of being able to say you've been there and gawped at it. A bit of one-upmanship, how much money you can afford to spend on something as unnecessary as that. The whole thing smacks of incompetence. Fancy building a craft like that wasn't safe to do that and carry people down there just to look at that ship. It's daft.
Well, how people choose to spend their money, as long as they're doing it legally, is neither here nor there between us, Phil. If people want to spend their money doing that. I take your point about safety. That is a real obvious problem. But would you have the same criticism for people going to see Auschwitz?
I would go to have a look at the First World War battlefields.
Why? If you think
to pay my respects to those people and those men who did what I think of every day, and I'm ever so glad I didn't have to do it. Same as I'm glad I wasn't on that sub, or I wasn't on the Titanic. I've been in danger, I've been irresponsible, I've been silly, and I've woken up to it. Just think of all the money that's cost and all the men's lives who've been, and women, who their lives have been put at risk, trying to put a mount
But
a
Phil,
rescue for that sub.
if you went to Ypres or you went to the Somme and you were respectful about the memories of those who lost their lives on the place that you were standing, you could also do that if you were to have dived down to the wreck of the Titanic. You could be very respectful of the people who lost their lives in such a horrific way.
No, that's nothing. There's no comparison.
Why?
Absolutely no comparison. I'm not risking my life going to the.
Well, that's okay. So not risking your life. But that's your decision. That would be up to you. What about 9/11? Would you go to New York to the base of the Twin Towers? Probably, but like I say, what's the difference?
you're not risking your life to go there.
No, you're not, but that's your decision, so that's up to them.
I'm not risking my life to go there. You're not listening.
I'm not asking you to.
Well, that's what these people did. They risked their lives, and what's more, they put other people's lives at risk.
I felt extremely, extremely sad. I saw the aunt on the television this morning. My heart went out for the boy, and I'm really sorry. But can I say something, Tom? This type of risk-taking without, even if it's Father's Day bonding, it doesn't matter how rich you are, you could have done something else. But if that was my son, I would definitely say, I'm sorry, but I don't think he should be going with you because it's too risky. And I'm really sorry that there was nobody...
Listen, again, I come back to what I said at the start. Would you say that to their face at this moment, given the grief that they're experiencing? Would you say that to their face right now if they were listening right this second and they heard you say that? Would that add to their grief and their torment about what is going on? I think it probably would, but Nita, I think, to be honest, I think you speak for a lot of people seeing this, I'm afraid. You're right. I think you're right.
I'm really sorry, and I apologise to the aunt if she's listening, but she knows.
Yeah.
They all know within themselves that,
You're right.
and I'm only speaking in hindsight, or I'm seeing this, so I just want to say my heart goes out to them. But Tom, I'm sorry, but I know what I'm like. I've got kids, and there is no way that not on a submarine thing that goes down 13,000 feet or whatnot. I'm sorry, that's not
and
bonding.
And if it's right that he was terrified and wasn't very up for it, and it was it's just I'm 100% with you, Nita. I really am.